Welcome to Allies or Enemies. I'm Jess.
And I am Sean, and this time we are looking at Maps of Misterra, and it is designed by Mathieu, Bossu, Timothée, Decroix, and Thomas Cariate.
And this copy was provided to us for review from the publisher, but the thoughts are all our own. And in Maps of Misterra, you are explorers trying to chart the land. So you have a personal board that you're adding your best guesses to as it fills out on this shared board. But let's look at how it plays.
You begin the game with an explorer on a deserted island, an empty parchment, and a couple of secret goals. On your turn, you first move one space, and then you map starting from an adjacent tile, which means you choose a sketch card and add it to your parchment board. Then you look at the island, and if a map tile was blank or a different kind of misty tile, you add a misty tile of the kind that you claimed was there. If there was already the same kind of misty tile, then you flip it to its confirmed site and it is locked. Instead of mapping, you can also choose to claim, which means you add a marker to the island board and score points for the contiguous group of terrain that you're on at game end. After your first action, you then move and map or claim a second time, and then play moves to the next player. All of this can change slightly depending on the terrain that you're standing on, as each terrain type has a special power. The game ends once either the island board has all been confirmed, one player has filled their parchment board, or there are no more sketch cards available. Then you add up points for how well your parchment matches the final island, with negatives for blank spaces, all of your claimed lands, and your secret goal cards based on your parchment board. And then the greatest cartographer is named.
The personal goals are really interesting. The very first time we played, I had misunderstood it and I thought I had to try and do that on the main board. And I was like, this is impossible because you keep messing it up. How am I ever going to get the terrain to match? And then once I realized it was on my own board, that made so much more sense. But then you have to be okay with it not matching. Because originally I think I felt like I'm a cartographer. I need to have my personal diary of where all the terrains are be exact to what is on the main board, and you do get points for that, but you also have to be okay with that's all right that it doesn't match because I have these goals that I'm working towards. And so there is a lot to consider. So each turn seems really simple because you can move or you can stay, and you take a card and you put that down and you put the terrains as you described. And that's what you do on your turn. And then you do that again a second time. But it seems really simple, but it's still really interesting.
But you mentioned that you do your turn twice, that's also a bit hard to get your head around, but I like it. So you move, play a card, then you move and play another card. So you can kind of agree with yourself, which means depending on the cards that are in the market, in the card row, you may be able to just play the same thing twice and be like, all right, these two go here, that's for sure. But oftentimes you also just want to spread out and do these two and these two are all maybes, but I've added a whole bunch more to my personal board.
Yeah, especially near the end, I do feel a little bit like it's a race to just try and fill that main board, so I at least have that done and don't get negative points. But there are two personal goals that you're working towards, and that is really important because you're never going to be able to do everything perfectly. So being able to get some points maybe from this card and some points from this card can really help make a difference. And you do get to choose at the beginning. So each player gets given 4 of those and you pick 2. And I have found from our plays that some definitely feel a little bit easier, or some just feel stronger and have a higher point value payoff. But it's nice, I guess, that you get to have the choice at the beginning.
Yeah, I don't think that they're completely balanced, but you do get 2 and you do get to choose out of 4. But I do wish that they were maybe a little bit more balanced. I'm not sure. I don't know the math of it. There are probably play styles that go with some. There's sometimes you get 2 that are really synergistic and you think, oh, this is really going to work well. There's sometimes where you can't find 2 that are quite going to mesh like that. So it can really swing the game. That's worth a lot of the points. But But I do generally like that you're kind of balancing out that, how do I match the main board? How do I match those goals? How do I make my groups? That you've got quite a few little things that you're thinking about. And I think at 2 players, this works fine. I would say this probably would be better at 3 or 4 because you have more people messing with the board. But I think it works pretty well at 2.
Yeah, I don't know if I would prefer it at more because I think there is enough to consider with the matching and the personal goals that I do like having control every other turn. So I do think it would play different with more players because there'd be more interference with that. But I do think it's not like easy at 2 to get everything done. That it's still a competition. So I also do really like it at 2. And I just like that it feels so different. I think
Sit Down does a good job at that. Same thing with Redwood as well. Like I feel like Sit Down is just really doing some different stuff, and I do appreciate that. And this does also have a solo mode, and the solo mode works pretty well. It's just it's a deck of cards. It gets rid of some of the cards from the market, and it puts out tiles in different places. And it's it's kind of random, but it really does mess with you. And it's kind of a best score, but it's one of those like best score plus, and it felt like a real puzzle.
I could see it working well as a solo mode with that interference and the puzzle that you still need to solve to maximize your points. In terms of other things, the components, I think, look really good.
Oh, yeah, they're beautiful.
Yeah, even though the terrains are, pretty straightforward of just being your standard type of terrains, everything comes together nicely. The tiles are really thick for the shared board and look cool with the mist, and then your personal board and the individual cards that slide on and covering it, everything looks good.
Yeah, no, it looks great. It does a really good job with that. And they've got a cool thing too, we didn't mention this, but with the terrain, each of the terrain interact with your little explorer dude who's moving around in different ways as well. So the mountains you can see further, and the fields you can just zip through, and the lagoons let you remove things, and the jungles only let you claim, they don't let you play. But that also brings into the all of that decision making.
Yeah, because you can only put cards out dependent on where your explorer is. So that will affect the directions that you want to move. And the terrains can make a really big difference. Like if I wanted to almost lock Sean in and I was at a spot that I could put a forest thing in his way, then that's going to slow him down as well because of having to claim a spot if you're in the forest.
I would say for new players, this can be a little bit tricky to kind of get your head around. It reminds me in no other way, but just in that way, a little bit of Decrypto, of like, it's such a simple idea once you've got your head around it, but it's so hard to explain because so much of it is like a little bit unintuitive. And once you've done it once, you're like, oh, but then even then, if you try to explain it to someone, you're like, no, but it's like, oh, it's so simple. It's just this. The rulebook does do a good job. We didn't have any problems understanding it, but it's just a little bit tough to kind of get your brain around, like, I don't care that this matches that. And then you're like, but I want this to match that because things need to match, right? Like, oh no, but you can just put this, but that's a lie. But I'm just going to do it anyway. And then your lies get you points. This teaches you that lies will win you games.
It is unintuitive. The first time we played, you almost had a perfect personal board to your map board.
And I got like no points.
And I got so many points because mine was nothing
filled
like
with
it.
Lies.
It was filled with lies, but I did so well with my personal goals. So you're just always trying to prove your personal goals that you're working towards.
Yeah, you just want to be right for you, not for the world. And that is it. That is Maps of Misterra.
Thank you so much for watching. Please let us know in the comments if you've played Maps of Misterra or your favorite cartographer game. And as usual, please like, subscribe, and hopefully we'll see you next time for another game.